you know, you're sorry. So you have Choshen on the day Yaakov. Yishlach has a point in Kodesh and it's in Yisodeka. He's going to come in for Secham, like lost for his dashness. Eating the Chacham with Lecha. That's also your mother. Ran Rabbi Shuasecha, V'Shem Eloheinu Nidga. Yimali Adonai Kol Mishalei Secha. Ata Yodaiti, Yeshia Adonai Meshicha. Yanehu Mishmei Kodshem. Begvures Yesha Yemini. Eila Varechev, Veila Basusim. Vanachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Maskir. Hema Korov V'Nafogo. Vanachnu Kamnu V'Nasoidu. Adonai Yeshia Hamelech Yaneinu V'Yem Karein. Pushka. So pass it around. Thank you. Before we go into Perek Tes, chapter 8, I just want to go over one in chapter 7. Then Perek Zayin in chapter 7, he talks about Tshuva Tata, and he says that, yes, one way is by the two things that'll arouse the feeling of Tshuva Tata in a person. One is when he thinks about and meditates on how pitiful the Rahmanas it is on my neshama, which is the Nefesh Elokis, and it comes from the highest place. And here it came down to this physical world. And the whole purpose of coming down is to get closer to Hashem and higher. But at the end result, I schlepped it down to a place which is very low. But the second thing is, it says that the strength of Klippa is Yeshus, is Gaiva, is arrogance. And if I am able to crush the arrogance of the Nefesh Bahamis, of the Sitra Achra, then it doesn't get in my way, and that helps me do tshuva. And how do we crush the Sitra Achra? It says when a person feels broken and crushed about whatever it is that they're doing, that they're not in the right place, all these thoughts, when they crush the person's spirit, it really crushes the Nefesh Bahamis. So as we were learning this, I said, and I just want to just go into that a little bit more, is that today we're not into this Avodah. That's not the method that we use. The method we use is the Avodah more of Simcha. And the reason is because one of the reasons are that today we don't have the capacity to handle this kind of Avodah. Like I mentioned, they're just like Begashmias. We have antibiotic. An antibiotic is something very good because it destroys that part of the body that has a disease. But if you take too much of it, it destroys not only that, it also destroys the good, the healthy tissue in the body, and does tremendous damage to a person's health. So years ago, people were on a different level, and they were able to separate the two things. But today, we see if a person engages too much of these thoughts, but crushing and feeling broken, what happens is not only that they crush Nefesh Bahamis, but they also crush and break, Chas v'Shalom, also the good. It leads to a person being down and depressed, and all the negative results that come as a result of that. So just to explain this a little bit better, we find something similar to this, and lately it became a little bit of a controversy, and that is that we find that in other circles outside of Chassidus, there's a lot of emphasis on the punishments the consequences for doing Averis. The punishment, the consequences here in this world, and then a lot about the punishment, the consequences in the next world, in Gehenna, how a person suffers, and learning all about the different kind of suffering, and learning all about the different kinds of punishments. So you do not find that this is something which you focus on in Tanya and Chassidus and so on. So first of all, some people raise the question, no, we do find it. In Perek Ches and Tanya, the Alter Rebbe lists all different kinds of punishment that are found up there after a person passes away. So we see that it is in Tanya. And I heard somebody wants to use the expression and say something like, well, in Chabad we don't believe in it. That's so not true. There's no such thing as no believe in it. It's part of Torah. It's part of the basic belief of Yiddishkeit. It's all over in Torah. In Chumash is about the punishment in this world. And then in Gemara and Midrashim, we find so much about what happens in the next world. This is not something which is a question whether it's true or not. It's absolutely part of Torah. It's part of our basic belief that is reward and punishment. It's not we don't believe in it, we don't focus on it. Big difference between that. And so that's the case. Why do we find this in Tanya Perek Ches? So first of all, that in itself is a point. That's the only place you find it in all of Tanya. You don't find it all over. But even over there, why is it there if that's not our approach? So the answer is, why isn't it our approach in the first place? What's the reason? Why don't we focus on it? And actually, it could be very helpful if a person thinks about Pas Shalom, what the consequences will be. It'll stop me from doing an Avera. So the answer is two things. Number one, the Mazur Chamagid explained that when a person thinks about punishment, basically in their mind, they're focusing a lot on the attribute of Gevura, Hashem's attribute of Gevura, which is harshness and judgment, and in that kind of relationship with us. So even though it's about punishment for Averis, but I'm still focusing so much on the attribute of Gevura. And by doing that, I'm, God forbid, drawing down a sense of Gevura upon myself. And therefore, it's not a good thing to think about punishment and negative results, because that in itself draws down that sort of negative light and negative energy. But still, why can't it be used as a method to make me more God-fearing and so on? So the answer is, because in essence, this is not the true, the way we do it, is not the true fear of Hashem. If a person, for example, is about to do an Avera, and then they say, yeah, but if I do this Avera, this is going to happen to me, so I'm not going to do it. That's not real Yiras Hashem, because it's not really fear of God. It's not a spiritual, godly emotion. It's really, I'm afraid of getting hurt. So just like a person wouldn't do things physically that are risky, that could be hurtful. A person wouldn't climb somewhere very high where they can fall down. A person wouldn't be handling a machine where they can gut themselves. It's not a godly feeling, it's all about me. So therefore, if a person is constantly thinking, I'm not going to do this because there's these consequences, I won't do that because there'll be a different punishment or another punishment. Basically, what I'm thinking about all day and what I'm obsessed with is me, myself, and I. What's good for me and what's not good for me. And therefore, Chassidus teaches us that the way to arouse feelings which are true and pure Yerushalayim is by thinking about Hashem himself, about its greatness, and about how awesome he is, and how much I should feel gratitude to Hashem. These are thoughts that are about Hashem. It's more about Hashem than about me. When we think about punishment, it's based on belief in Hashem, but the thought is more about me than it is about Hashem. So then why does the Alter Rebbe talk about it in that chapter? So if you look closely, you'll see the Alter Rebbe is not talking about it as an incentive not to do an Aveira. The Alter Rebbe is in that chapter. The point is to describe and explain how different Averas have a different effect in terms of our connection to Klipa. Some Averas, it's a deeper damage, and some Averas, it's a lesser damage. So when he brings in the consequences, it's just a way of measuring and helping us understand the difference between one kind of Avera and other kind of Avera, how deep the damage is. In other words, if you tell someone, don't do this because if you do this, you're going to need stitches. Or if you, and about something else, if you do that, you God forbid you'd have to have surgery. It's not just scaring the person, it's explaining the person that the damage and the second thing is much more severe than the first. Because the first, doesn't require hospitalization, doesn't require surgery. The second one requires surgery, so obviously it's much more damaging. So Alter Rebbe in that part of Tanya is just using the Indian of punishment as a way of gauging, a way of measuring the difference between the damage of one Aver and another Aver. So we don't focus on those things, which means Hasidus is very, very focused on that all my thoughts and everything, whether it's about tshuva, whether it's about davening, whether it's about learning, every thought should really be based on Hashem, and not about what it means for me in terms of my status. Am I a failure? Am I a success? Am I this or am I that? It's not about what I am. It's about fulfilling Hashem's will. So even when it comes to tshuva, when a person has a broken heart, years ago people were more refined. When they had a broken heart, it was for the right reasons. We are more coarse and more full of ourselves and our yeshus. So even when we think about tshuva and a person thinks has a broken heart, even that is something which is more about me than it is about Hashem. What I mean to say is there's a story with the Baal Shem Tov. I can't remember exactly how the story begins, but there was a certain Jew that he was saying a Shamanu Bagadnu. And he was singing all along the way, happy Nigunim. Simple Jew. And the Baal Shem Tov asked him, you're saying Hashamnu Bagada, so why are you singing happy songs? Imagine, Hashamnu, I sinned against Hashem, Bagadnu, why are you singing happy songs? So he said that in the king's palace, this is the way he explained it in this simple way. In the king's palace, there are many different people, different servants that have different jobs. And there's one servant that his job is to clean the garbage. So even though he's cleaning the garbage, but he's very excited that he's able to serve the king. So one person serves the king by cooking. Another one serves the king by being the waiter. Another one serves the king by bringing in the mail. And I serve the king by cleaning the garbage, but I'm serving the king. If you think of it, what's the point of the story? The point of the story, it's not about me. I have a nefesh elokis, and there's negative things in me, and I'm cleaning it up the way Hashem wanted. So I'm happy that I'm doing Hashem's will. The way it normally is with us when we start thinking and we're getting sad about something that I did wrong, because I did this wrong, so I'm a failure. It's about me. I'm no good. As my brother, my sister, my cousin's better than me. That one is better than me, and this one's better than me, and I'm no good, and I'm a failure. So when it's focused on me, it's the opposite of kedusha, it's the opposite of godliness. So therefore, we don't focus on these things, and definitely not in a way like it says in Tanya with fasting or anything that has any kind of effect on the health of the body. So even though it says that there is such an avodah, but the Alter Rebbe and definitely the Rebbe in our generation teaches us that it's not the avodah of our generation, and that in order to understand it better, the Rebbe gives an example. Even in those days, in the times of the Alter Rebbe, everything the Alter Rebbe says here would not apply to Shabbos. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to say Hashamnu Bagadnu. You're not allowed to fast. You're not allowed to think about Averis. Why? Because Shabbos is a day which is supposed to be just simcha and just eating, just pleasure. And you're not allowed to do anything that does the opposite. The Rebbe says we're living just like there's the days of the week that it's applicable. I'll get to you in a second. And Shabbos is not applicable. If you talk about the generations on a larger scale, we are now close to Shabbos on the larger scale, which means close to the times of Mashiach. So our avodah now is with Simcha and not with that. And this we'll see in the next chapter how that applies. Yeah.
Why on Shabbos you're not allowed to think about yourself?
Because Shabbos is the day of Simcha. Shabbos Hashem is revealed to us. Shabbos we're in the presence of Hashem. In fact, there's a passage where it says, in Hashem's presence is only joy and happiness.
Where is that from?
That what I just said, it's a pasuk in Tehillim. Also, we have it in davening by the part which is Hodu, is that pasuk.
In Hashem's presence.
There's always strength and joy. Oiz v'chedva. When you say the Hodu, if you pay attention, you'll see that it's there. I mean, there's more to it. We can go on this. We can talk about this subject for at least Sheva Brachas, at least for 7 days, for sure. So we'll just have to do bits and pieces here and there. We'll continue now in chapter 8. So do you have everyone have the Tanya? Anyone needs? That's a war. So we're doing a Geras Tshuva, using lessons in Tanya, the most recent edition, and we're starting with the beginning of chapter 8. Perek Ches. Chapter 8 is on page 260. Okay, so as we said, the theme in Tanya, Geras Tshuva, is about the 2 types of tshuva that there are. Tshuva Tata, the lower level of tshuva, and Tshuva Elah, the higher level of tshuva. Up until chapter 8, he explained Tshuva Tata. Now he's going to explain Tshuva Elah. After deeply thinking, like all the things that were mentioned before, and thinks about how the Rachmanas, how pitiful it is when he thinks about the Neshama and about the Shechina, that it came down to a low place. Then he'll ask be'emes, from the depth of the heart, and say, Kirei rachamecho mecheb sha'oi. The pasuk, Hashem, with your abounding compassion, please erase my transgression. Ki os to kava believe be'emes goydel rachmanas al-chinas al-kusha benavshe. So you notice here also, he's not broken about, I didn't make it. He's broken about the nefesh halakis is suffering, and he'll feel rachmanas, like you said before. Because there, when I feel compassion for a nefesh halakis, as we know that our world and Hashem correspond to each other, and whatever we do here is Rusa de Tata has an effect up there. It's Rusa de Leila. So by me having compassion, I'm a nefesh halakis, I will arouse Hashem's compassion, which is Yud Gil Midas Rachmim, Hashem's 13 attributes of mercy, and Meshachas Meratzon Elyum Baruch Hu. The 13 attributes of mercy come from Hashem's Ratzon, his will, which in other places is referred to as Kesser. This is a level that's infinite. It's higher than all the spheres. Shalamayla, Mayla, Mebchinis Hashpa, and Nishpas Me'osi Shem Havaya. It's much higher than the name Havaya. So remember, before we explained that when you do an Aveira, it causes a defect in the Yud. Different Aveiras cause a defect in the Hey. Other Aveiras cause a defect in the Vav. And then there are Aveiras that cause a defect in the final Hey. So all the Aveiras are connected to Shem Havaya, and every Aveira I do cause a defect in one of the letters or a certain detail of a letter. But when we do tshuva, especially when we have this feeling of compassion, we arouse and draw down Hashem's compassion. Hashem's compassion comes from a level that's higher than the 4 letters of Hashem's name. V'lachem you'd give me this rachman menakim kolab gomer. And that's why the 13 attributes of mercy could correct and clean out all the defects. When shekasav neisi avim apesha b'nakei. Remember we said, I'll just repeat it again, the mashal, which is brought down by the Alter Rebbe in different Maimarim, that the mashal is that if there's a river that dries up, or a well that dries up, there's no more water. What do? We dig deeper, and in fact, it's impossible. If you dig deep enough, you're going to expose new water, and that water rises and fills up the river or fills up the well, and now you have water again. So the same thing is Baruchnius. When a person does an Avera, causes a defect to the Yud, to the Hey, to the Vav, or the other Hey, so now it's sort of dried up spiritually. We dig deeper. What's deeper? We reach a level that's higher than the four letters of Hashem's name, and that's Hashem's will. In the word Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Alter Rebbe says that's the little crown on top of the Yud. We're reaching to that, and when that's drawn down, it fills up all the gaps, everything that's missing, everything that's lacking. And then the Keitata no longer is connected to Klip and Sitra Achra. And what happened before, that the hay was drawn and schlepped down into Klipa, is now corrected. Page 262. And now the hay returns back to its place because we destroyed the Klipa that had a hold on it. And it returns, it's almost like going out of captivity. The hay is held captive in the place of Klipa. And when we do tshuva, it's like release from captivity. This yachid, the Yud Kei Vav, it goes back to where it was before, connected to the full name of Hashem, which is Yud Kei Vav. And that's why tshuva is Toshuv Hey. Just like we accomplish this in the spheres, we accomplish the same thing in the neshama. That person does an avera, it causes a defect on the neshama. And what does the defect do? It blocks us that we don't have that connection to Hashem like we had before. But once a person does this process of tshuva, shuv ein averaseichem avdilim, so the averas are no longer separating between me and Hashem. Like it says, Vinaka, one of the 13 attributes of mercy is Vinaka, he will clean. So the Gemara says, Vinaka hu l'shav, means Hashem is cleansing to those who return to him. Lirchayis, l'nakayis, nafsham, melubushem atzoyim, emachitzein b'sitra achra. That the person, when he does Navera, brings into him Klipa. What does Klipa do? It's a barrier between me and Hashem. And when I do the tshuva, it washes away all those barriers, and they're no longer blocking. There's an expression in Gemara that when a person does an avera, the sin, malachafasa means that it envelopes him, it encompasses him, it's stuck to him. But the tshuva washes it away. Now, we're going to lead into the inyan of tshuva law. Now, once there is this forgiveness and the person is purified, now the neshama is able to return to Hashem himself. The neshama could go higher and higher into its source, to attach itself to Hashem, with an incredible unity. Just like Begashmius, he gave a mashal with blowing. So when a person blows, you blow on a piece of paper, and there's something blocking between my breath and the paper, then my breath won't reach the piece of paper, it won't move the piece of paper. If there's nothing blocking, then it's good. There's even a deeper level than that. The breath, before I blow, where is it? It's in me, it's part of me. So with Hashem, it's the same thing, that the neshama, not only there's nothing blocking, and there are no barriers, and the neshama is connected to the source of blowing, It's actually, the neshama is connected to the original source, where the breath of Hashem's mouth, so to speak, is still in Hashem himself. And the neshama could reconnect to that. That's the deepest level of the neshama. Mashal gives the mashal, like when a person blows, the terem sheyetzer ruach mepir, before the breath is blown out, it's miyuchad benafshe. It's part of the person. It's inseparable. It's part of my energy. The zui tshuva shlema, and that is the ultimate tshuva. This unity that we're talking about, and this tshuva, tshuva ilah, this is called tshuva ilah, the higher level of tshuva, shalacha tshuva tata, and this comes after tshuva tata. So let's explain this a little bit better. Basically, what it says in Chassidus is like this: that when the neshama comes down to this world, of course, there are many challenges. What about a neshama that's davening and learning, doing mitzvahs, doing everything right, actually reaches the level of being a bain in the morning, Leah? And what about a neshama that's living like a tzaddik sheina gomer, tzaddik gomer? So is that neshama now reached the level where it was before? So it says in Tanya that the neshama is insignificant compared to its original source. One of the ways this is brought out is in a different chapter of Tanya, where it says that Avraham Avinu said about himself, Anochi Ofer ve'efer, I am earth and ashes. I once met someone whose name was Mr. Erdnest. So he said, where did he get the name Erdnest? His ancestors, when they had to choose a last name, he said, what is a person? Ofer ve'efer, earth and ashes. So he called it in Yiddish, Erdnash, means earth and ashes. So it became Erdnest. But I would think that it just means that he's very humble. The Alter Rebbe says there's something deeper here. If you take a table or a piece of furniture and you burn it and it becomes ashes, is this ashes something new, or is this the table that was here before? It was the table that was here before. It's not new. Yet, you can't compare the ashes to the table. The ashes is worthless compared to what was here before. But it's not something new that was created. This is the very same table that changed because it went through fire and it became ashes. But it's really the table in a different form. So Avraham Avinu, the source of his neshama was chesed of Atzilus. And that's why he was all chesed. And there's a statement brought down, a quote from Kabbalah brought down very often, that Hashem's attribute of chesed said, the day that Avraham Avinu was created, I don't have to do my work anymore, like I'm on vacation. Avraham Avinu does it for me. He's me down there on earth. In other words, he came from Hashem's attribute of chesed, and he manifested Hashem's attribute of chesed down here. And yet, Avraham Avinu said, if I would compare my neshama down here to what it was up there, it's infinitely greater. It would be compared like ashes compared to the original object that was there before it was burned. So therefore, no matter how much a person davens, how much a person learns, how much a person feels connected to Hashem, nevertheless, it's still insignificant to the connection the neshama had to Hashem before it came down. It's like he says here, it's like the breath of Hashem's mouth before it was being blown. It's so much part of Hashem. So this is the answer. Remember last week we finished up with the question, the difference between tshuva tata and tshuva ilah in simple words is that tshuva tata is going from bad to good. Tshuva ilah is going from good to better. And we asked the question, if it's going from good to better, why are we calling it tshuva? Call it some other name. It's not tshuva. Going from bad to good is tshuva. I'm returning to be good again. I'm going away from my path, which was negative, and I'm being good. But if I'm good already, I'm just getting better and higher and deeper. Why call it tshuva? So this is the answer. It's based on the pasuk Baruch Toshuv Elokim Hashem Nesana, that the spirit of Hashem went back, goes back to where it came from. The simple pshat means it's talking about after 120, that the soul goes back to its source. The Alter Rebbe explains, no, it means while the person is alive, the neshama makes every effort to go back to its source, which means to feel down here the way it felt up there. So even if a person's a tzaddik and he's davening and he's learning on a very high level, he still can go deeper and deeper because the neshama up there is infinitely greater than what the neshama experiences down here. Down here, the neshama is in a body. The body limits the neshama. It restricts the neshama. So on one hand, it's going higher, but on the other hand, it's tshuva. I'm going back to what I was originally. That's why it's called tshuva. And this is the reason why the difference between this tshuva and that tshuva is with a broken heart. This tshuva is more about simcha, because our focus is to develop and bring out deeper potential and deeper potential. That's not accomplished through a broken heart. That's accomplished through simcha, which makes a person uplifted, and it gives when a person's besimcha, that's when they become, what is the lesson? Simcha paired together. Simcha breaks barriers. I was limited before with my love, with my fear, with my devotion, with my learning, with my davening. When I'm a simcha, I become unlimited. I can daven deeper and more and higher. And that's how a person goes from level to level. So this is the famous story. Even though there's again more details and another angle to it, but there's a famous story with Reb Sadia Goyen. Reb Sadia Goyen was one of the greatest leaders of it. He was the leader of the whole Klal Yisrael in his generation. The Goyenim lived about it was the period of 500 years after the Gemara was completed. So we're talking about close to a little bit over 1,000 years ago. They lived in Babylon, and Iran, Iraq, these countries. And Reb Sadia Goyen he was considered the greatest leader of Jewry at the time. But they didn't have pictures in those days, so nobody really knew what he looked like. One time he was traveling, and he stayed at an inn. The innkeeper had no idea that this was Reb Sadia Goyen. Somehow there was somebody who recognized him, and word got around that Reb Sadia Goyen is here. And one morning, the innkeeper walks out of the inn and looks around, and he's shocked. There's a few hundred people standing outside. And he asked them, what is everybody doing here? So he told me, you don't know who your guest is? You have Reb Sadia Goyen is in your hotel. We all came to greet him, to see him. And he was in total shock. He couldn't believe it. When he walked out to greet the crowd, this innkeeper walked over to him and burst out crying, and he begged for forgiveness. And he just couldn't calm down. Finally, he calmed him down and says, what are you asking for forgiveness? You gave me breakfast, you gave me lunch, you gave me supper, you gave me my linen, you gave me towels, you gave me everything I need. What did you do wrong? And he said, if I would have known who you are, I would have done it on a whole different level. So Reb Sadia Goyen, this story was that he said, when a student saw him saying, Oshamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, they asked him, why are you saying that? You didn't do these things. So he said, I learned from that innkeeper how to do tshuva. I say to myself, now I know Hashem on a whole different level than I knew yesterday. Had I known yesterday what I know today, I would have served him so much better. And the next day the same, and the next day the same. So these are tzaddikim that every day they're just going higher and deeper into bringing out their full potential. And it's really infinite. So they're constantly going higher and higher. In a certain sense, this is what it means when the Rebbe says, I mentioned to you that our generation, our avodah is tshuva lo, not tshuva tata. When people hear it, they're a little bit in shock. I mean, what, we're such big tzaddikim? And the Rebbe explains that on a collective scale, we've done enough tshuva. Even have gone through enough suffering, gone through enough avodah, and we have done that. Now, we have to focus on bringing out our full potential. I'm focusing on that. And that you do through simcha. Like we said, that in tshuva there are two parts. One part is regretting the past, and the other part is making a resolution for the future. And our avodah is to focus on how can I do more? How can I grow? How can I become more connected to Hashem? So this is through simcha, we bring out the best within ourselves. Parshas Nosei. The tshuva law, what is tshuva law? Is asking beraisa b'dechilu urechima l'kutshabrichu. Tshuva law is through engaging in Torah study. In other words, when a person studies Torah, it's not about having a broken heart or feeling. It's just about deepening my connection to Hashem. The more Torah I study, the more I internalize Hashem's wisdom in my mind, in my heart, in my neshama, I become more connected. And Torah study is connected to Bina. It's knowledge, it's understanding. Bina is Ben Yudke. The word Bina is as if it's two words, Ben Yudke. What he's referring to is, remember we said that Tshuva Ilah is connected to the first Hey in Hashem's name, and Tshuva Tata is connected to the second Hey. If you still remember the chart that we had, it shows that the first Hey, the Yud corresponds to Chokhmah, and the Hey corresponds to Bina. So that's Tshuva Ilah. The second Tshuva is that the first Hey, the higher level of Tshuva is the higher Hey. It's about reconnecting to Hashem through Torah study, through Bina, through learning. Umailas about Tshuva, said al tzadikim gmurim bazeh. And what's the Maila of this Avodah of Tshuva? It says in the Zohar that the Maila of a person who does Tshuva over a tzaddik is the inun moshche olaya berusa leliba yatir ubechela sagi v'skorva l'malka. Their longing for Hashem and their reconnecting to Hashem is much more intense than a person who doesn't have that Avodah of Tshuva. So this explains why even tzaddikim are meant to do tshuva, but it's not the tshuva that we're talking about. It's tshuva ilah. It's about this feeling that I'm very far from what my neshama used to be, and therefore I'm longing and craving to become reconnected to Hashem like my neshama used to be connected. So here he says that the tshuva ilah, the higher level of tshuva, the higher level of connection comes through Torah study. And the next chapter is going to explain how the higher level of tshuva can also come through davening. And there's a difference between one and the other. I think instead of stopping with the questions, we'll go straight into chapter 9 because it's a continuation. Yes.
Explain and briefly, like, understand page 264, it says this letter about as a child.
Which one? The word with Bina?
Yeah, like how it connects to the letters.
Okay, so let's do this again. Remember, we had the chart. First of all, we said the word tshuva is tashuv hay. The hay returns. And then there are two hays. There's the first hay, which is called Kei Ilah, the higher hay, and Kei Tata is the lower hay. Now, if you remember, we said that there are 4 letters in Hashem's name, and the spheres are broken up into 4 groups. The Yud represents Chokhmah. The Hay represents Bina. The Vav represents the 6 Midos. And the last Hay is Malchus. So Tshuva Tata means that the last Hay of Hashem's name, that's the part of the Shekhinah that's brought down and drawn into Klippa. And that's the part that has to return to its source. So when we say Toshav Kei Tata, that's Tshuva Tata. That causes the second Hay to go to its source. When we talk about Tshuva Ilah, it means that the Hay Ilah, the first Hay, the higher Hay, that is where you see the Tshuva. What's the higher Hay? So being that it stands for Bina, and like he says, the word Bina in itself stands for Ben Yudke, that this is the Yudke of Hashem's name. the first hay, not Vav K, but Yud K. So it's the first hay of Hashem's name. And through Torah study, which is being understanding and learning, that'll deepen our connection to Hashem, and that's going to be Tshuva Elul. Yeah. So this is really continuation, still talking about how through Torah we accomplish this higher level of Tshuva. Ubiru I was going to explain it further. It says, Bina ihi tshuva ilah. Bina, this is the level of tshuva ilah. V'aim revetzes ala afrechem. The pasuk where it says the mother crouches over the chickens, which means it crouches over her children, which basically the children in Chassidus are the midos. As we know, intellect gives birth to emotion. The emotion are considered the children, and the intellect is considered the parents. So even though we say the parents give birth to the children, just like the Gashmias, the child is born from the father and the mother. But who's the one that's directly responsible for the birth of the child? That's the mother. She carries the baby for the 9 months, and the process of birth, it comes from the mother. Same thing also spiritually. Even though the midas, the emotional attributes, come from Chokhmah and from Bina, but the one that's directly connected to producing emotion is Bina more than Chokhmah. Why? You have to come back tomorrow. We'll do that. Okay, to be continued. It's not a good day, everybody. Yes.